Yo, welcome everybody to another episode of the Cine-Files live here on the Cine-Files YouTube channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by my co-host on this ride for the last few years now, Steve Morris. How are you?
I'm good, and Happy New Year. We've got a whole new year of Cine-Files here.
That's right. That's right. For those of you who are joining us live, we've been pitching this one for the last, a couple of weeks now that we're going to go live with this show, talk about the state of film in 2021, or if you're a bit highfalutin, the state of cinema in 2021, and then look forward to what we might be getting in 2022. Also talk about some of the things that we've got coming down the pike in 2022. Already, Steve and I mapping out months and months ahead of time, but of course, things pop up out of the blue and kind of adjust our schedule, but we've got a lot of fun ideas for 2022 to keep earning your attention and your views and your listens to our show, and also hopefully inspire a lot of you who haven't joined the Patreon yet to join the Patreon or to up your level of joining or being a part of the Patreon because of all the great content we're delivering for you all for sure. Steve, let's check in. We're just finishing the first week of January. How are you feeling about 2022 already? We've suffered the loss of Betty White, the loss of Peter Bogdanovich, the loss of Sidney Poitier. A number of other people passed away this morning. I saw the Dobie Gillis lead, the actor played the lead in Dobie Gillis, passed away. So the gentleman who organized Woodstock passed away. I just recently saw him in a documentary for Woodstock 99 that's on HBO Max. So how do you feel now as we're starting with this kind of, a little bit of a cloud in 2022, or do you not feel that way?
Well, first of all, thanks for bumming me out right at the beginning of our show.
Oh, I like to start negative and go positive.
It can only go up from here.
Come on.
The people that passed away, of course, it's a loss. And
certainly.
I mean, Betty White was she almost made it. And I think just like emotionally, I mean, the woman was 99 and had an unbelievable, amazing life. And the fact that she didn't make it the next few weeks to get to 100 is sad, but it's not that sad. I think, we had to celebrate her life. And Bogdanovich and Sidney Poitier, they're also older gentlemen. These weren't tragedies, but I do absolutely believe that this is a time to take stock and to honor these incredible people. And it's funny. I had a friend after Betty White died. I had a friend who said, I'm just worried about what the next two is because they always come in threes. And I said, no, they don't. That's statistically incorrect.
How dare you?
And then, of course, two more people died. And I was like, damn it.
Never doubt the reality of it all, man. I'm telling you. You just never know.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it honestly put our Cine-Files schedule into a bit of a tizzy.
That's true. That's true. Not that that's important in comparison to people losing their lives, of course, but for the way we schedule the show,
I guess it is slightly less important than the death of important people. Yes,
true. That's
slightly less important. Do you want to announce some of the things that are going to happen this year? Or
I don't. Not already. I mean, we just walked into the show. We want to wait till a few more people show up, and then we'll start announcing some things. Let's have more of a conversation about where we're at. One of the big things we want to talk about here is the state of cinema in 2021. And Steve, we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of critics having this kind of groundswell pushing for the Spider-Man No Way Home film to be nominated for Best Picture. But Steve, I mean, we suffered through the COVID situation already through 2020. It feels like we had the sequel, to use a term, in 2021 now over the last few months. As I woke up this morning, I read that Sundance has canceled all their in-person screenings. And a lot of people were so excited to go back to Sundance. We're seeing more. Disney announced that Turning Red is going to be the new Pixar film. Yet another Pixar film is going straight to streaming on Disney Plus on March 11th. So we're seeing so many changes in the tides. We had day and date releases with Matrix, Godzilla vs. Kong, and other films, Mortal Kombat, that came out streaming and also on the in the theaters. And then we saw these big tentpole pictures like Spider-Man No Way Home, Fast 9, No Time to Die, the James Bond film, kind of blow up at the box office. So when the Hollywood Foreign Press, the Golden Globes blew up on us in 2021 as well, with the racism and all of the accusations there, and they're apparently changing their tune now. as we're on the precipice of the Golden Globes, I think coming out tonight, happening tonight at some point. So what's your feeling about cinema as we walk out of 2021 into 2022?
It's so funny. I think, first of all, obviously nobody expected that we would still be dealing with COVID today. I mean, when we started, we were like, well, this is going to be a couple of weeks. And now it's 2 years later. And if you had asked me at the beginning of 2021, are people going to be able to make movies? My answer would have been not that many. It's going to be really, really hard. And yet, so the one thing I say is, I think it's amazing how many great films actually have gotten made in the last 2 years, that people have overcome this adversity. And I think it's just a testament to, you know, people who have worked on films know that working on films is adapting to disasters and reversals and problems. And each film has its own set of problems to solve. And I think in some ways, filmmakers were some of the best people to figure out how to adapt to this, because it's not like we saw, oh, they did smaller films or they did less complicated films. It's like, no, these were big, huge films that got made, some of them very, very successful. So that's the first thing I'd say, is that surprising. And I think that the other thing is that we couldn't predict what was going to succeed and what was going to be good before. Right. And now it's like, you know, if you had said, you know, we have movies that were incredible movies that just bombed, you know, which is really, really sad and something to be examined. We have movies that were not good, some of which I never saw. But I've told from my friends, the Geek Buddies, things like Venom were not good films, but made lots and lots of money. You know, like we had, and this whole, there's so much mystery in terms of the day and date and streaming versus movie theaters. And because we don't know how much do those Pixar movies bring to Disney Plus? How many subscribers, and how does that balance off against not having the theatrical release? We don't know these numbers. And so it's all such a mystery, I think.
Yeah, it's a mystery machine for sure. Paul's saying, enjoyed No Way Home, but Best Picture nominee, come on. That's Paul's response there.
I gotta say, so I didn't see No Way Home right away. It took me, I was about a week after everybody else. Okay. Fantastic job, everyone, not spoiling things. I mean, there were things that I knew ahead of time. Right. But I didn't know about a bunch of stuff. And what I will say, I can't think of a time in the last decade that I have seen more, not just universally positive comments in social media, but blown away. This was the greatest thing I'm seeing it 5 times. So Paul, I got to disagree with you. It's like, what about it is not ready to be nominated for Best Picture? That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a sea change, for lack of a better term, in this approach to film criticism, in this approach to film appreciation, and then in this approach to award shows. You know, at some point, these awards organizations, and Steve, this is kind of previewing a Cine-Files short we have coming up, but these awards organizations are going to have to wake up and smell the coffee a little bit, that if a film is this widely beloved and is this critically praised, then people have to wake up for the fact that what other boxes does this thing need to check? Like, does Andrew Garfield or does Tom Holland? Does Tom Holland have to be going through some sort of seat? What's the word? I don't know. Some sort of, I don't know. Everything is there. He's going through an incredible amount of emotional trauma. He's dealing with a massive loss that occurs in the movie. He's also having people showing up from different dimensions to test him. There's so much here that you could argue has a little bit of an art house characteristics to it. It's not Tangerine, but certainly there's stuff here that you could argue has the bones of some of the stuff that we've seen and lauded and enjoyed in the past. You could tell me Green Book is a better fucking movie than Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm going to say no.
This is something we talked about in the Cine-Files forever, is the idea that this genre should be elevated and these genres are less important or less difficult. It's like, to me, look, the tastes of the world have turned towards these Marvel movies and movies like it. And some of them have been fantastic and some of them less good. And making a great one is just as hard, takes just as much artistry, just as much great craftsmanship, just as much great acting as anything else. And the thing I'll say too is, like, did you laugh a bunch in Spider-Man No Way Home? My guess is you did.
Yeah.
Did you cry? I did.
I did.
Yeah. Like, were you thrilled by amazing things? Were you involved in the characters? This is a good movie.
Were you invested in the story?
Yeah.
Were you blown away by John Watts' ability to elevate the film to match the scope of what they wanted to do with that film? I mean, don't forget, John Watts, an independent film director who was handed the Spider-Man Homecoming to see what he could do with it, knocked it out of the park for the most part, went to the next level with the sequel, going overseas and whatever, throwing in Mysterio, and now we go even higher, and he's been able to progress with each installment and add a little bit of his own instincts, which are art house instincts, along with the more mainstream approach to movie making. But I don't recall when a film that does well with the mainstream and is critically lauded and is loved by the fans of the film doesn't get nominated for Best Picture. Just because in Godfather Part 2 was lauded as an incredible film in 1974, but it was from a genre that was pretty much what do you want to say? Pretty much persona non grata.
Yeah, it's been a B movie genre forever.
B movie genre, exactly. The gangster film genre was a B movie genre. People forget. So just as many people were probably saying, I don't think Godfather 2, it's a bunch of mafia stuff. We don't need to be glorifying mafia. We don't need to be doing that with our film stuff. I'm sure there were people or critics who had issues with that. So this is the thing that I think we have to kind of see that is changing within our cinema here as we go into 2022. It can't just always be art house films that get nominated for Best Picture. And in fact, Steve, in 2008, The Dark Knight not being nominated is what inspired the Academy to open the door to go back to 10 possible nominees for Best Picture. So comic book movies have been influencing changes amongst awards organizations for quite some time here in the last few years.
You know, it just occurred to me. We've talked so many times about how the movies that Hollywood makes have changed, and that it used to be that the big money movies were Lawrence of Arabia and Bridge on the River Kwai. And, you know, like that's what, but two things about this. One is those were all popular movies. In fact, if you looked at the biggest money makers of all time, they were the Best Picture winners. Gone with the Wind, The Sound of Music, like these are The Sting. These are all movies that had been among the most successful of all time, all of which won Best Picture. So, or maybe The Sting did. Did The Sting? I think it did.
Sting won Best Picture, yes, 1973.
So that's one thing. But here's the thing that just occurred to me is that I think as this shift has happened, we see more and more that it's the independent film, the so-called art house film that gets nominated for Best Picture, which it didn't used to be. 20 years ago, that's not what happened. And I think what's happened that it never occurred to me until just this moment is that has created an expectation that that's what's supposed to be Best Picture. You know what I mean? So because we've seen even comments in our feed of like, you know, that it's not artsy fartsy enough. It's like, well, this is a recent development. It was the big, popular, huge movie. Those were always nominated for Best Picture. You know?
Exactly. I mean, you look at I'm looking at The Atlantic right now, which is as artsy farts as you can get in terms of film criticism and film analysis. And they have Dune as their number 7 picture of their top 10 pictures of the year. And Dune is a mainstream sci-fi massive epic. So what separates Dune from Spider-Man No Way Home? He's also a young kid dealing with loss, dealing with a removal of someone very important from their lives, dealing with navigating a new threat that's coming from another planet, for God's sakes, not another dimension. Those things are correlative to me, and having to figure out what to do with the assistance and help and inspiration of a young woman who ironically is played by the same actress. So I just find this to be so interesting that Dune gets a pass because it's Denis Villeneuve, but Spider-Man No Way Home doesn't get a pass because it's John Watts and Marvel. That seems wrong.
I think it's the anti-Marvel thing because they're both, I mean, it's like, is Dune more artsy fartsy than Spider-Man No Way Home? Sure. It's more artsy fartsy, but artsy fartsy does not mean Best Picture to me. I mean, it's like, I think that Dune is an incredible achievement visually. I think they did a fantastic job of adapting a very complicated story. I think I like down the line, I was like, because I reread the book right before the movie came out, because that's the kind of thing that I do. And I think it was like it was right out of my brain. I think they did such a good job of visualizing things and how the character moments were all there. They really did a great job. I enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home more than I enjoyed Dune. you know, it's a more enjoyable film.
Right.
And again, I think Dune probably does deserve to be nominated for Best Picture. I just don't understand why this movie that everybody loves is one people are going like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, right. It's a bridge too far. It's a bridge
too far. It's bizarre.
I need to nominate the film about the orange.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
What it is too is like there's a difference between going, man, I really wish Hollywood was in the business of still making, you know, movies like these big important films. But just because I wish that isn't a reason to not recognize the movies that they are making, you know, like people like superhero movies and the really, really good ones are really, really good. Just like a really good musical is a really great thing, or a really good, you know, whatever mystery is a really great, you know, it's like Silence of the Lambs is a serial killer thriller.
Yeah.
That swept the Oscars. Why? Right. Because it's a really, really well-made movie.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, great point. As you see it all the time, you know. So we're changing. Things are changing. And speaking of changing, maybe now, Steve, 20 minutes into the show is the right time to start kind of previewing these things that we're going to be bringing to our listeners, our viewers, our fans of the Cine-Files. For those of you who are watching and listening right now, we've got guests who are going to be coming in here over the next couple of hours to hang out with us and give us their opinions. Movie critics, friends, hosts, pundits, all coming in to hang out with us and give us their thoughts on 2021 and 2022. But with 2022, Steve, we got some ideas for the show, for our podcast. What do we got coming up?
Let's see. Which one do you think we should start with?
Please, I threw it to you, so you choose.
All right.
You choose.
Well, we're talking about Marvel films. We kind of said what we thought we were going to do, and now we are officially announcing, here is our plan. Everyone's been asking, what are you going to do about Marvel films?
Right.
Our plan, since we have this 10-year rule, is that we are going to discuss every single Marvel movie on the anniversary of when it came out, which means that 2012, 10 years ago, is when the Avengers came out in May. So we will be discussing the Avengers in May. But the problem is there were some movies that came out in 2010 and 2011. And so we got to do a little catching up.
2008, which we already did, I think.
Yeah, we did Iron Man. So we have the movies that we will do before May are Thor, Hulk. No, sorry, not Thor. Sorry. Iron Man 2, Hulk, and Captain America, the First Avenger. We have to do all of those before we get to the Avengers in May. Here's the thing, though. There are some different levels of quality within some of these Marvel films.
Very true.
And so we don't necessarily feel that all of those deserve the full Cine-File, possibly multi-part treatment.
Yeah.
So some of the lesser films, I'm going to say probably Iron Man 2 and Hulk, are going to be Cine-Files live shows.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you and I both like Captain America, the First Avenger, a lot.
Yeah.
That is going to be a regular Cine-File show. Yeah. And then in May, we will be doing the Avengers. So that is a big hunk of what we're going to be doing over the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. You guys have been clamoring for us to tackle more of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is absolutely going to be happening in 2022 and beyond with the Cine-Files that we're committing to doing on the 10th anniversary, every one of these films when they came out. So we're going to kind of tackle it all and have some fun with it. We hope you come on the Cine-Files live shows to give us your thoughts on those Marvel films that we're going to be covering for those particular shows. And we hope you enjoy when we do our deep dive into the Marvel films that we will be deep diving into. And we haven't even announced if we're going to be bringing on guests for those, which will probably extend them out. But, that's certainly always a possibility with Steve and I for sure, because we love that, having multiple points of views besides ours to give us some new perspective on these films.
Well, you certainly have access to a lot of geek pundits through the Geek Buddies. I was just listening to your Boba Fett spoiler review on the Geek Buddies. Again, I am a huge fan of the Geek Buddies. I'm assuming everybody already subscribes to this show, but if they don't, what are you guys doing? You're missing out. Yeah.
Please go subscribe to it either wherever you download the podcasts, or head on over to the Outlaw Nation channel and subscribe to that channel so you can get all the Geek Buddy stuff for sure. Listen, we're not level 2 says Steve is shitting on Thor 2. No, we're not shitting on your Thor 2 level 2 trading, but some things are just true. And as much as I like Dark World, and certainly I know people who like Dark World, I think we have to understand that a majority of people don't, so it's best to just do it as a live. And those of you who love Dark World can come in live and defend your film against the other people who might be in the chat who don't like it quite as much. So that allows for a little more of an interactive approach to looking at this film. Yeah.
By the way, I don't think I said anything about Thor 2. I said Iron Man 2.
Oh, see, so there you go.
Yeah.
Level 2. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
But level 2, I don't like Thor 2. So you read my brain.
There you go.
It's okay. It's funny. I don't think there's any Marvel movie that I walked out hating it.
Yeah.
I think there were some that was like, oh, all right, you know.
Well, I have to say I walked out of Captain Marvel not liking it, but revisiting it for the show I do on stereo with the Lady Outlaw, I had a whole new appreciation seeing it through her eyes as a woman. And I really appreciated that. And it changed my perspective on it. Not that it got better necessarily, but it certainly wasn't as reviled in my mind as I had originally thought about it, you know. And so I thought that was a nice eye-opening experience for me personally. So
Karen loved it. Karen it's kind of the same reaction. I think I don't think it's as good a movie necessarily, but in terms of, you know, passing the Bechdel test,
yes,
like, just like this is a woman's story who is a powerful, interesting character.
Yeah,
I think it is kind of groundbreaking, even if it's not the best movie.
Absolutely. Philippe asks, he says, you guys have done the best picture winners of 62, 72, 92, The Godfather and Unforgiven, respectively. Will you do Gandhi from 1982? Steve, do you want to tell people about my push for Gandhi for many, many years?
I have. You say that as if I've resisted it. I pushed for it too. I wrote you an email saying, dude, we really need to do Gandhi.
Yes.
We totally want to. I know it's one of John's absolute favorites. I watched it a ton as a kid. I haven't watched it in forever.
Wow.
It clearly will be a multi-parter. So maybe, I mean, our schedule is so fast, but maybe, after May, the schedule is empty. So I think we will, let's just lock it, say we're doing it in May or in early June.
Well, we could do it as a way of kind of maybe doing an Oscars season approach to our podcast in the latter half of the year. Maybe start doing it in October, November, and December. I know we have the Christmas film, but maybe focusing on films that have that kind of Oscar potential or Oscar shine to them. I know we've talked about the best years of our lives a few times, so that could be a place to put that as well. Yep. So maybe, but we're also, and this is something I hope I can put out loud here, Steve, for the fans and the listeners, we're also focusing on more of those quote unquote crowd pleasing films.
Right.
We definitely want to focus on those films as well. So the Cine-Files has been, I think, we've been great at covering films that are crowd pleasing and also going back in time to cover some of the smaller films or some of the more black and white films that people don't revisit quite as often as they should, and some of the classics and everything in between. So we just want to focus a little bit more this year on also hitting some of these crowd pleasers. Marvel is a part of that, but also other films that we've kicked around and wanted to have fun talking about and diving in deep on them. We really want to do that as well. So that's something we're focusing on this year. And also, don't we have a survey coming? Should we tell them about the survey?
Oh, that's right. You know what? Damn it. I was going to actually have this published. You know, I'm going to do two things at once. Yes, we do have our annual listener survey. And one of the biggest questions, since we have our 10-year rule one thing I should say, there is a question about the 10-year rule and whether or not we should continue it. Is that there's nothing written in stone that says the Cine-Files can only do movies that are more than 10 years old. That was an arbitrary thing that we created a long time ago, and maybe it is time for that to change. So, but I am going to have to multitask slightly because I just have to push the button to make the survey officially live.
There we go.
And then we can put the link up right here. Because one of the other questions, though, is assuming we continue to have the 10-year rule, 2012 is now open, and that means there's a whole bunch of new movies for us to do. And the other question is, for the last 2 years, we have redone films that we did in the early, much shorter days of the Cine-Files.
Yes.
We redid Raiders of the Lost Ark, the very first movie we ever did, and turned it into a multi-part episode.
Yep. We
turned Die Hard into a 3-part episode. That was so much fun.
Yes, it was
such a great movie to explore. And so now it's what film from the early days of the Cine-Files would you like us to revisit? Well, I'm going to open up that survey right now, and we'll get you the link in just a second.
Amadeus.
It's on the list.
So right, exactly. So that's the thing that we're putting in for. I had been thinking about things over the Christmas break, And Steve and I have had discussions about the 10-year rule in the past as well. But this time around, I felt like going into 2022, it's always good. Steve is so great at like having ideas for the show and what can we do and what, great ideas and stuff like that. We kick around stuff. Sometimes I'll come up with something, but Steve does a great job of that. And so this time around, when I was home, I was like, this could be an interesting way, because I've been hearing the sound from some of you all who listen to us and watch us that you want us to kind of break that 10-year rule every once in a while for certain special exemptions. And I think we did it for Black Panther, which was completely worth it. But I also think maybe it's time to retire that rule. So if some of you feel this way, it's on the survey there for you all to feel to vote on it for sure. Because some people are very adamant and appreciate the 10-year rule because it allows a film to marinate. It allows a film to kind of achieve a certain status, whereas 5 years might be enough for some films. So who knows? So it'll be up to you all and what you say for sure. So, Paul
John,
says,
I am sending you the link in the private chat so you can put it out. So hold on one sec. And maybe part of the solution is just nobody forces us to keep this all the time. Is that we can be flexible?
Yeah.
Is that a special movie comes up and we really want to do it? We're going to do it. I think at the very least, that is something that is totally reasonable.
Mackenzie here says, I like the 10-year rule. So there will be people who defend the 10-year rule. So, all right, I'm going to type this in. Here is the survey for you all to download or to access and toss in your votes or cast your votes on the survey. So here we go. I'm going to put the link in here. Boom. And also just to remind you all, the Streamlabs and the Super Chats are open. I'll see. I'm blocking my first troll here. But yeah, Streamlabs and Super Chats are open, ladies and gentlemen. So, what is your thoughts and opinions about what we're pitching for 2022? But also, what's your feeling about cinema in 2021? And as we go into 2022, what do you see happening in the world and in the state of film and cinema? Let us know there with your Streamlabs and your Super Chats for sure. So there we go. All right, I put the survey there in the chat. It's under the Cine-Files account. So click on that or copy and paste it, put it into a new tab and leave it there for when we're done with the show for you to go and, fill out the survey. And if you can do both at the same time, knock yourself out. It's a free world.
Listen, if I could publish the survey at the same time as appearing on camera, then it seems to me that you could probably take the survey while listening to us. It's like 5 questions.
I feel there we go. It's very, very simple, ladies and gentlemen.
It's pretty simple.
Anything else we want to announce for 2022 right now, Steve?
I think, I'm happy to announce all the stuff if you're up to. So the next one I'll say is, Sidney Poitier just passed away, and that of course threw our schedule into a bit of turmoil, but we feel this is an incredibly important person to cinema. And so the first thing we're doing is we're going to re-release the only Sidney Poitier movie we ever did, which is In the Heat of the Night, which is an incredible film, winner of Best Picture 1968. And we've also recorded a new intro, just really going into our feelings about this incredible actor. But we also feel that's not enough. So that's, I think, going to come out tomorrow. We're going to put that out. But right now, right before I got onto this live show, I was watching another movie from the exact same year, which is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Right.
And I want to tell you how this came about. Was after when someone passes away, there's this ghoulish thing that I end up doing is I text John or John texts me. It's like, okay, I guess we're going to do a movie of this person.
If we haven't done one for a bit.
And the thing that happens where you text someone and they text you at literally exactly the same time. This is what the texts were. I wrote to John, well, I don't think we should do Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. At the same moment, John wrote to me and said, we have to do Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And I said, well, I think it's more Spencer Tracy's movie than it is Sidney Poitier's. And he said, it's totally Sidney Poitier's movie. And I went, well, now we have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, like that just that moment of disagreement and the fact that it was like, and I love this movie. I love this movie.
Steve's cleaning it up. I said, are you insane? This is absolutely a Sidney Poitier movie. And I even reached out to my friend Maurice and told him about our back and forth. And Maurice was my friend from back home. He's a city manager there in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And he said, are you insane? Of course that's a Sidney Poitier film. So to me, I'm like, yeah, I feel so. So this is going to be a fun discussion because I've never thought of it as a Spencer Tracy film. So I'm very curious to hear Steve's point of view on it as we discuss it. So yeah, that makes it all the more exciting when we don't 100% agree on an approach to a film. That makes for a fun episode usually between us. So yeah,
even though we both agree that we love the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And it is such a perfect contrast within The Heat of the Night, which was made the same year.
Oh, God.
And it's funny, a little preview, watching it right now.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at Poitier's performance in this movie and how totally different it is from In the Heat of the Night.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is just polar opposite characters, you know.
You compare any of his speeches in Heat of the Night to the speech he gives to his dad, which is powerful. Just so powerful. You know, 2 generations of black men. You know, and I just saw The Tragedy of Macbeth, and we have some of that in The Tragedy of Macbeth when Corey Hawkins confronts Denzel Washington. Corey Hawkins being Macduff, Denzel playing Macbeth. Their confrontation at the end of the film and the dialogue they have with each other using Shakespeare's dialogue, it is fascinating to throw in the context of a younger black man versus an older black man and their approach to the world and what they've each experienced differently at different times. And of course, we saw that in Falcon and Winter Soldier with Sam and with Isaiah Bradley, where Isaiah was like, they'll never have a black Captain America. And Sam's like, they will, and it's me. And so it was like so very interesting. I love that we're getting more nuance and exploration of that within black representation in numerous films. Yeah.
It's so funny you bring that up. I for me, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the most disappointing of the Marvel shows. And that was the thing that I wanted more of. Like I think that was the most interesting thing. And I think we spent so much time on the other plot stuff that I was like, no, this is an amazing question. And I don't feel they really answered that question. I mean, yes, they did have him become Captain America, but I don't think I felt it was a little. It's funny thinking about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because in a lot of ways, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is about that same question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in a weird way. And I think they didn't engage as much, didn't have as much. There wasn't enough resistance to him becoming Captain America socially in terms of race. We didn't delve into that as much as I wanted them to.
Yeah.
I love everybody that's in the movie. And I think that, you know, I just wanted, it was one of those where like, oh, I wanted more. You know?
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. A couple people are asking if we're going to do anything for Betty White. Should we do a short for Betty White? Is that something we should throw in the mix?
Absolutely. I think she's, I mean, because it's funny. I just heard an interview with her. Fresh Air had an older interview, and Terry Gross is such a great interviewer. And she asked, did you ever want to do movies? You never did a lot of movies. And she said, and Betty White said, I never wanted to do movies. She said that it's so much more fun doing TV. It's a regular job. You get to work with the same people all the time for a long period of time, as opposed to you show up and do a thing and then it's over. And she also loved the intimate relationship with the audience that you have through TV, because you become part of the family with TV in a way. And so she's not a Cine-Files person. She's not a person that made films, but she is awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, so totally, we should absolutely do a short on her.
Yeah, would love to do that as well. We got a Streamlab that came through from Notorious by Chance. What's up? Good to see you. Says, love you guys. Thank you for everything you guys do for the film community and us movie nerds. Hope you guys have a fantastic 2022. Thank you, Notorious by Chance.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very cool. They've been trying to get me on their show. We'll figure that out. I know. Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I see in the comments going by that Philip H asked, would you cover The Last Picture Show for Bogdanovich?
Yeah.
That movie is very interesting, and especially now. John, what do you think? Should we cover The Last Picture Show?
Yeah, we've talked about that. I've never seen it. So I think it would be one of those films that I would be very curious to watch now and see what I get out of it, because I'll tell you this is never far away from me. This incredible book where Peter Bogdanovich and the series of interviews he did with Orson Welles, these are phenomenal. This book, look how great, look how brown it is and frayed it is, because I go back and read this all the time. I've respected Peter Bogdanovich as an interviewer. Some of his points of view, some of his perspectives haven't always agreed with, but he's a guy who is very knowledgeable about film and very willing to speak about film. And so, but Last Picture Show is a film I've never seen, even though that's the one that put him on the map. So it would be a good inspiration to see the film and have the discussion with you about it for sure for our fans.
I, first of all, want to second the importance of that book. I'm the same thing. I haven't, it's probably been 3 or 4 years since I've read it. I've probably read it 5 times.
Yeah.
I think it's you and I both are just obsessed with Orson Welles. You and I both read many biographies. That book to me is the most true version. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I got to know Orson Welles the best in that book.
Yes, agreed. Even with some of the flourishes where you don't 100% believe he's telling the truth, still, you're still getting an exposure of who this guy was as a person. Yeah.
Well, you're hanging out with him. I mean, that's what, basically. And you also hear he exposes some real vulnerability in that book.
Yes.
I'm going to be really curious what you think about Last Picture Show. It is a full 70s film in the it deals with some stuff, and it doesn't deal with things in a wrap a bow on it and this is what it means way. It deals with, it's a 70s film, you know?
Right.
I literally have no idea what you're going to think of it, but yes, I absolutely think it's something we should do on the Cine-Files.
All the more fun, for sure, to dive into that one for sure. And should we talk about anything else that we're doing coming up in 2022, Steve?
Well, you know, John, every year for the last many years, we have devoted what started off as a month and has become longer into the work of a single director. We started, of course, with Orson Welles. Then we did Alfred Hitchcock, whose films we had totally not on purpose avoided. You know, we just didn't do a Hitchcock film for so long. And then our most requested films probably ever were the Godfather films. And so we spent not 1 month, but I think it was over 2 months on the Godfather films.
Yes.
It was a long time and a very deep dive. And there is another filmmaker whose work we have not purposely avoided, but he's one of the most important filmmakers and is still a filmmaker working today. And we are going to, it's not going to be right at the beginning of the year because of some things that recently happened, but we are going to be spending probably well more than a month on Spike Lee.
Yeah, Spike Lee is our next one. We've been kicking around this idea for a couple of years now. We feel like this is the approach. No, this is the time to approach Spike Lee. We've got a number of interesting new tactics and methods that we're going to use to cover Spike Lee and to talk about it. And it's not going to be the standard, let's just invite a black pundit to be part of the situation. No, we wanted to do something more. We wanted to give more respect to the work that Spike Lee has done. And so we've got a number of ideas that if it comes to fruition and we pull it all off, I think you guys are going to absolutely love it. You guys and gals are going to absolutely love what we end up doing with our approach to Spike Lee this year in 2022.
I'm really looking forward to it. And it's funny, I started researching Spike Lee, and then Peter Bogdanovich and Sidney Poitier died, and so that kind of got put aside. But he's a really important filmmaker for me.
Yes.
I think he is a truly life-changing filmmaker for me. In terms of the way I saw the world. I talk so many times about this play I did in college where I partnered with the Black Theater Workshop and wrote this play about racism with an African-American playwright, Reggie Coleman. And I don't think that would have happened without Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
I think Do the Right Thing, my head exploded, and the direction of my life in a lot of ways as, you know, a white Jewish kid from the suburbs, like suddenly this whole other world that I knew so little about opened up, and I said, I need to learn about this. And that has been a lifelong process of trying to learn about a world I didn't understand. And Spike Lee, I think, really is the beginning of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the experience was, and we'll repeat this on the show, I'm sure, but the experience was, oh, wow, someone is putting on screen the stuff that we have talked about within our own ethnic communities for a number of years, for decades in some instances, or generations in some instances, and to see it up on the screen like that was so incredible. And then I would agree with you because watching Malcolm X is what got me to quit my fraternity, quit my school, and change my life completely. Was that, and I got to tell Denzel Washington that when I interviewed him off camera for Equalizer Part 2. I got to tell him, "Thank you so much for making that movie, being part of that movie. That movie changed my life because of the things that you said in this particular scene." You know, and that's of course dialogue written by Spike. So there's so much of his movies that came along for those of us of a certain age that kind of changed our points of views and our perspectives on the Black community and the Black experience in this country. And it's still changing our points of views or evolving our points of views on the Black community, the Black experience in this country with Black Klansman and those recent 9/11 series that he did, the docu-series he did on HBO Max, which if any of you watching and listening to us haven't seen, you have to see. It is incredible. So
Malcolm X, we started this by talking about Marvel movies and the kind of movies that Hollywood doesn't make. Malcolm X.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an incredible film. Yeah.
And almost didn't get made, Steve, because Spike had to borrow money off numerous black celebrities in order to finish Malcolm X, because the studio wouldn't give him that much money. And that would never pass muster nowadays. It would never pass muster nowadays. If a black filmmaker was being barred or wasn't being funded to create a film about a black trailblazing activist who changed the world, the uproar would be insane on social media. So it's incredible.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's really hard to get money to make a film, and you don't think there are all sorts of black filmmakers or there are all sorts of people trying to make films that can't get money to make their film.
Yeah, I don't know. Good. Yeah.
Well, and I think I bet if we called up Spike Lee right now and say, hey, are there movies that you wanted to make that no one's giving you money to make? He would say, absolutely.
All right. But if they're on the level of Malcolm X, I would be surprised.
It's funny. I remember hearing about making of Selma. That movie took a long time to get funding.
But I'm saying now, post Black Lives Matter, I think now the avenues are more available. The money is more available because studios and companies fear a social media backlash. They fear a political backlash or a boycott. There's this huge, I think that's huge now, as opposed to, because the amount of filmmakers and showrunners of color that have exploded all of a sudden over the last 2 or 3 years. By the way, we could always do this, but have exploded in terms of opportunities, in terms of being hired, in terms of having their stuff greenlit is off the charts. But of course, that being said, in terms of female filmmakers, the numbers went down last year, which is really not good.
Right.
So there's still, Steve, there's still validity to your point. Absolutely. That in some areas, maybe it's not as easy as we think. And in other areas, maybe it is a little bit more easy than it was before. So,
you know what I find fascinating is that you would think that you would be able to predict, oh, John is the more cynical one and Steve is less, or Steve is the more cynical one. But actually it totally flips. There is so often that you'll be the more cynical one and I'll be the more like that. And sometimes the reverse. Like when it comes to raising money for movies, I'm really, really cynical.
Well, true.
Super cynical. But that's good. I think, I think if we had predictive, and it's funny, there's sometimes where you're more conservative and I'm more liberal, and sometimes the reverse. And I think that's part of what makes these conversations fun. Is that we're not always on the same. We don't it's not always like the right and the left. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. This is a great suggestion from Paul. He says, social network guys, that will be a good one. In fact, a month of Fincher would be great. Now we've promised to do social network, and we've promised to do it with Scott Mantz. So
that is correct.
At some point we will be tackling that, but Steve, maybe next year, a month of Fincher wouldn't be a bad idea, with Seven, Zodiac, the Social Network, a number of other fantastic films that he's done. Could be an interesting thing to explore for us, for sure.
That's a really good point. And by the way, someone posted about the interview with Halle Berry talking about struggling to raise money. I heard, I believe that was also on Fresh Air. I heard her on Terry Gross talking about that.
Yeah. Well, she was raising. You mean like recently for the MMA film that she was the lead in? Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, MMA films. No one's clamoring for MMA films. And Warrior is one of the greatest films you're ever going to see sports wise, and it didn't make a dime. And it was a fantastic film with 2 great actors in the lead. So yeah. All right, let's see here. All right, it's a lot of people finishing up the survey, so thank you all so much for finishing up the survey for Steve and I, for sure. All right, let's move on. Steve, you said you had some questions, you had some ideas that you wanted to bring up on the show as we're waiting for our guests to show up randomly throughout the next hour and 15 minutes. What do you got?
Well, I was curious, just to start off, and I know these are topics you've talked about a lot on the Geek Buddies, but
wait, before we dive into that, speaking of a Geek Buddy, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome noted actor, author, teacher, historian, and all-around geek buddy, Shannon McClung. Shannon McClung, ladies and gentlemen. Shannon McClung. Sorry, Shannon, let me take that thing off you real quick here. Here we go. There we go.
I apologize for the echoey sound. I'm currently in the room that is going to become my office in about 2 weeks. So there is nothing in here at the moment. It's me in a chair. I'm currently sitting on the carpet.
I love it. So Steve was about to bring up a question about the state of cinema, or the world of cinema now. And so if you don't mind, let us listen to Steve and then we'll answer it.
Let's do it.
And I have another question I want to ask Shannon, since when he's on, but we'll start with, so we've had a year of streaming services and day-and-day releases and movie releases. But the big question is what does the future hold? Like, what do you think has worked in 2021? Because it was a year of such experiments. And what do you think has not worked?
Gosh. So the especially with the Warner Brothers HBO Max day and date release strategy that they did, it kind of saved me from having to go to a theater to see a movie that I didn't like. I was trying to go see Spider-Man No Way Home again, and the theater was just a little too crowded. So I came home and I was like, well, I'll throw The Matrix Resurrections on up on at home on HBO Max, and it was not for me. I understand that there are a lot of people that the Matrix franchise is near and dear to their heart. But for me, it was like, this is just not striking the right notes for me. But had I been in the theater, you're kind of forced to sit there and watch. I mean, that's one of the downsides of streaming. And there are some great movies on streaming that I've only seen on streaming, like Coda, which is probably my favorite movie of the year. I do think it's just so easy to check out when you're at home and you're streaming, because you've got your phone, you can hit pause, let me go grab something to eat, let me go grab a little beverage. And that's not how movies are designed. They're designed to watch from beginning to end. If the filmmaker wants there to be an intermission, they will put in an intermission, a la Lawrence of Arabia or The Hateful Eight or something like that. So I think that's one of the challenging parts. I love the convenience of the streaming, but knowing, and I'm certainly guilty of it as well, knowing how easy it is to jump out and not being able to kind of fully get on that ride that the filmmaker wants to take you on. For 2022, I'm so thankful that we are able to go back to the theaters. And the few times that have happened in 2021 where you did have a big group of folks, I mean, mainly it was in the Marvel movies, but getting to have that communal experience. Again, speaking of Spider-Man, I took my fiance to see it yesterday, and we were in. It was
the first time I've heard you say that word, fiance. By the way, that's awesome.
Thank you. But we're in a theater probably about a third full, a quarter full, and she's not necessarily the biggest Spider-Man fan, but there were certainly moments in that as we had left, like she was laughing as we had left. She's like, "Gosh, I was so surprised that there wasn't more of a reaction from people when these big moments kind of happen." And I was like, well, there was. Two weeks ago, when everybody saw it for the first time. But I mean, that's something that I treasure about the theatrical experience is getting to share those big moments, getting to share this love of cinema and this love of stories and this love of these characters. I really hope that we're able to get back to that, because it doesn't just have to be for Marvel movies where you can have that experience. You can have that experience in a comedy. You can have that experience in dramas as well. So I hope we're able to get back to that. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on this has been evolving. I follow this this young critic and analyst here, Kate Sanchez. She's someone that I have really appreciated, because from a female point of view, a Latina point of view, but also like kind of I'm willing to say what nobody else wants to say kind of point of view. I really appreciate her. And she kind of, she released like a 7-tweet thread last night that I retweeted on my Twitter because I read it and really appreciated that. This idea that we have to go back to the cinema. We have to be a slave to the cinema. And sometimes we forget, and she pointed this out, that like the cinemas are a luxury for a lot of people, especially depending on financial status, especially with the increasing ticket prices. So there's almost this shaming that seems to be happening amongst critics and some of the intellectual, quote unquote, intellectual elite who are claiming like, if you don't go to see this movie in the cinema, you're insulting film. You won't get what you're supposed to get out of it. And she points out rather correctly that quite a lot of us saw our first few films on TV with commercial breaks and still fell in love with these classic films and still fell, because there were no what do you call those houses? There were no reviews or something, whatever you call those things, where they show them over and over again. There weren't
like
those
second run.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there weren't those houses going on in the 70s and 80s when we were growing up, at least not where I lived. I couldn't go see Godfather Part 2 in a theater. I had to see it and rent it and watch it at home. So this idea that we must go back to the cinema, it does not have to be the pervasive point of view here. And if cinemas were to all get burnt down tomorrow, we would all still live. They'd still make films and we could appreciate them. And my counter to your point, Shannon, is if you're the one looking at the phone, the problem is you, not the streaming situation. If you're the one being distracted, going to the bathroom, losing the rhythm of the movie, the problem is you. But I would say you've probably watched a lot of films for the first time at home growing up and enjoyed them, even though you went to the bathroom or got some food or had a conversation with your mom or your dad or your sisters. Like, that's still there to appreciate.
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah. I fully accept that going on the phone, that's my choice. Where the theater experience for me is I'm not going to do that because I don't want to disturb other people around.
Of course. Right.
And
there's a social contract kind of going on.
Right.
Yeah. Even though not everybody follows it.
No.
You would maybe say most people don't follow it. But yeah, I mean, I understand your point of view about that. The first time we see some of the movies that do influence us in a huge way, were on television. But as an adult, like that's just what I want. I mean, and if you're not in a position, if you don't have a theater close to you, I certainly understand the luxury of what that is. Yeah. And that's why when I am in a theater, I try not to look at my phone because I don't want to affect other people. So, I mean, I understand your point, but for me, there will never be a replacement for that theatrical experience with a filled house.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, you asked the question. What are your thoughts on everything we've been banding about here?
It's so funny. Whenever I'm watching a movie and I look at my phone at home, I also think the problem is Shannon. I just think it's really, I blame him.
Such an influential person.
I think, by the way, the cost of movies it has become so ridiculous, and I see people mentioning it in the comment thread that for my family of 3 to go see a movie with the pop, that's a expensive outing. It's very expensive. I think for me personally, the great thing about movies is it forces me to go against my regular character, which is to 100% focus and be emotionally open to the experience the whole time, because my brain and my tendency, I am on the phone. I am distracted. I watch movies in bits and pieces. And part of that is what makes it possible for me to do the Cine-Files the way I do it, because I can be detached.
Yeah.
If you watch the way I was watching Guess Who's Coming to Dinner right before we got on for this, I'm starting and stopping the movie every minute. Yeah. Because I'm taking notes and I want to go back and look at a thing and get a line of dialogue right. And so it is the antithesis of just putting myself into the film. Yeah. So going to the movie theater is just such a great experience for me. And it was so funny. Right before the pandemic started is when I had gotten that AMC, A-list, whatever the thing was. Yeah. And that's when I was genuinely just going to see a whole bunch of movies, which I hadn't done in years. Yeah. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad, but I love going to the movies. And you guys have gone to way more movies than I have in the last 2 years. I've gone to 2 movies since the pandemic started.
Wow.
The first was Boss Baby 2 because it was a Jack's pick, and the second is Spider-Man No Way Home. Right. And it's like, I really, really do. I like the whole experience. I like walking down the hallways and looking at the posters. I like watching lots of trailers. I like all that stuff. I like the whole thing is fun. Go ahead.
I was just saying real quick, so don't you think that's how can I say this? That's the foundation of the point, is that it is a luxury. So therefore, what you remembered as a child, that was the luxury. Going to the theater, seeing the posters, the experience of it all was the luxury. So that's the foundation of it, which is why you still enjoy it today, because it still evokes that memory from when you were a child. all of us were children and going to the theater for the first time and seeing the movies and being like overwhelmed by everything. Yeah.
Well, and even though like we watch movies with better picture and sound than anything we ever saw when we were kids,
oh my God,
I still think content is king. It's not like, even though like, sure, it's great to have a great, LG OLED TV that's adjusted perfectly in your 5.1 surround sound system and all that stuff. That's great.
Yes.
When I was in college, the first TV I could afford to buy was, I think it was an 11-inch black and white TV. and that's what I had in my dorm. And I watched a whole bunch of movies on the little screen like this. And they're great. They're great. Because the movie was good. The story was great. The performances were great. And I was watching color movies on a tiny little black and white screen, and I totally enjoyed it.
Yeah.
By the way, can I just say, because I haven't been able to speak to anyone really about Matrix, because I watched it. So fun, because I watched it in 3 settings, because again, this is to the point of and I'd heard you guys talk about it on Geek Buddies, and I watched it, and Act 1 I went, I kind of like this movie. I'm finding it interesting.
Yes, Act 1 is good.
And then Act 2, and then I come back to watch the second part, and I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on or what we're doing. And the third sitting, I was like, there's all sorts of action and visuals going on. I was like, just sitting there going, I cannot believe how bored I am. Yeah. I am so unbelievably bored with this movie. It was really sad. Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned it, the numerous reasons. I think number one, you come back to the fact that you didn't bring back Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving. I think it's massive. No matter what Yahya Abdul-Mateen did, no matter what Jonathan Groff did, they are not the original actors of those characters. So in essence, you're watching cosplay from both of those guys. It's the same way people felt about Hannibal when Julianne Moore took over for Jodie Foster. It doesn't work. It never works. James Bond is the only time it works, which is why they don't bring over storylines from the previous Bond into the new Bond. They don't do that. It's a complete and utter new start, like Doctor Who regenerating. It's a new start completely, even though some of those villains will still cross over. It's just a new start completely overall. All right, what about 2022? Shannon, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you see happening in 2022? I mean, right now we're essentially in the sequel of 2020 that we just finished up here with all the Omicron variant. And as I mentioned earlier when I was talking to Steve, they've canceled Sundance, the in-person screenings. They're just going on now all to virtual screenings. So like we're seeing a reaction, and Europe has really shut down in certain countries, and certain cinemas are being shut down. Where do you see we're going next in terms of cinema? And you talk about streaming. Do you think in 2022 there's going to be more of these bold decisions like HBO Max and Warner Brothers did with their day and date streaming stuff?
I don't know. I don't think we'll see anything that bold, just because when that decision was made, it was when theaters, for the most part, were still shut down.
Right.
Like there was no place to go and watch a movie. But I do think individual movies, singular movies, that could. That happened to Turning Red, like the Pixar movie, which I think looks fantastic. I mean, they're now going to release that on Disney Plus. So it's just it's so difficult to predict right now, because I think on the heels of Delta, as Delta started to kind of recede, it looked like, okay, we're good. And then something else pops up. Yeah. And I know I've read several articles where experts are saying, well, it's going to peak in January. It'll start to go away. It's like, well, but then what's behind it? What is the next thing that's going to happen? Right. I do think in terms of what movies are made to be put in a theater, and like we had talked about this on Geek Buddies, I do think that's going to change, because we're still in an era, and it is ending, but of movies that were greenlit before the pandemic. And so enough movies that had very large budgets have underperformed to the point it's like, okay, studios are probably going to reduce the number of big budgeted movies that they make, because they're just not making their money back. Right. And that's, I don't know. I'm of two minds about that, because I love a big splashy action movie.
You do? I thought you were more of like a little art house indie guy.
I know. Interesting. The art house indie guy with the Rocketeer shirt on.
Yeah, that's right.
But sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. We might see some really incredible stuff get released on streaming that it just isn't destined for the theaters anymore. I mean, I have seen, like, despite the fact that I'm a little easily distracted at home, we have seen some great movies on streaming. I mean, again, Coda, Swan Song, which I just watched on.
So good, right?
Dynamite. How he has not been, at least to my knowledge, how Mahershala Ali has not been in the conversation for Best Actor it's really surprising.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it's just so difficult to predict what's going to happen. I mean, I think at the end of the day, again, just based off of Spider-Man's box office, people want to go to the theater. Like, people do want that, but they are going to be a little more discerning about which movies they're going to see.
They're not going to spend, as you said, Steve. Like, I was talking when I was back home at Christmas, I was talking to my sister's husband, and he's like, if I go to a movie with me and her and our 2 kids, that's $100. That's $100 or $120 easy. If I have to park somewhere, I have to pay for parking. In LA, it's even more, because sometimes you have to pay for parking. Sometimes it's certain situations you have to pay for the babysitter if you're going. Like, it could be expensive, for God's sakes. So you ask this question, you go, well, they're not lining up for Spencer or for Licorice Pizza or for anything like that. And a lot of those films do not need to be seen in the theater to be appreciated. Let's be honest. Let's be real. We don't have to see those artsy fartsy films in a theater. Is it great? Absolutely. Do I love going to see those artsy fartsy films and like an art house theater with other people who are going to go, yes. Oh, yes, of course, it's fun, but it's not necessary. The tentpole pictures, I think, are directed and designed and created so that people are in a theater having a church-like communal experience as they're watching it, or a sports-like communal experience as they're watching it. And that's a different point of view. And that, as I've said for 3 years since Movie Talk, as I think is going to be the way we go in the next 10, maybe less years, where less of those films are going to show up in theaters, the independent films, the smaller films, and it's all just going to be the big 10-hole pictures, and that's okay. That's why the streaming services still survive, because people do want that content. They want to see those smaller films at home.
I think so. First of all, in terms of COVID, which is the biggest variable, I think we are going to be shifting towards a endemic approach to COVID rather than a pandemic approach, and that. The idea, I think that we're going to have zero COVID and it's going to be totally gone and we're going to eliminate it and we're not going to go back to the world until we do that. Well, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And at least at this moment, being vaccinated makes it that you're not really risking hospitalization and death. And so therefore, I think there's going to be more and more going out. Now, if another strain comes along that's super deadly, well, obviously that's going to change and be hugely tragic. But I think people have shown they want to go out to the movies, and I think that's going to continue. I also think that, like, my gut is that the big tentpole movies, as you say, John, I think more and more of those are going to be released in the theater, and maybe the window will be shorter before they're streaming. But I think Spider-Man has clearly showed a huge desire for people to go to the movies.
Surely. For those kinds of films, yes, absolutely.
And I also think for, like, the artsy-fartsy movies, by the way, this might be the most mentions of the words artsy-fartsy in any context ever. I think we really said artsy-fartsy a lot, and we should continue to say artsy-fartsy because artsy-fartsy is a very interesting sounding phrase.
I feel like there are a few frat houses that probably said it more than we have. But yes, go ahead.
Fair. Fair. But what I think is like, those are the movies we're releasing them both in the theater, because we have these theaters, we have these multiplexes with lots of smaller theaters, is releasing them at the same time. That's where that really makes sense. So if you want to go see it in the theater, great. If you want to go watch it in a streaming service, that's great too. And I do think, though, that you're right that certain kinds of films lend themselves to being in the audience. If you go to see a comedy or you watch a comedy by yourself at home, those are entirely different experiences.
Right. Or a drama with a big twist. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or a huge epic, where that big screen and but if you're watching, a simple kind of nice story, well, it'll be fine on TV. Yeah,
well, and as knowledgeable as the three of us are, and as opinionated and how can I say this, well read and well watched, for lack of a better term, about films, there's no one who is more well-read, more knowledgeable, more opinionated, and more valid in their criticism of films than our next guest who's joining us live as well. A gentleman who we have enjoyed on the Cine-Files on numerous occasions. Steve and him co-host and the Enterprise Incidents podcast, and he's a gentleman that I'm proud to call a friend, and I'm proud that we have in our sphere and in our world the great Scott Mantz. How are you, Scotty?
Did someone say artsy fartsy?
I don't think so. I don't remember hearing anything about artsy fartsy. Do you? No, I don't think so.
Well, it is great to see you, fellas, and hi, Shannon. It's great to see you too.
Good to see you again, Scott.
You know, I did catch a lot of what you were just saying about the big studio films that, you know, in this case, Spider-Man, which is now past $1.5 billion worldwide and is now the 8th highest grossing movie of all time worldwide during a global pandemic, I might add. But all of the other films, even these big studio films like West Side Story and King Richard, none of those are doing well at the box office because those movies cater to older grown-ups who are definitely a lot more skittish about going back to the movies. It's like Spider-Man was like the only movie that people were willing to risk their lives to sit in a theater to do. And I mean, listen, I love Spider-Man. I saw it in the theater 3 times, and I'm so happy that the movie is doing so well and that everyone loves it. And I mean, you know, no spoilers, but the last hour of that film is just sensational. But I loved West Side Story, and I'm really sad that that movie is not doing well. Of course, I understand why it's not. And I thought King Richard with Will Smith was a terrific film.
Agreed.
Belfast, written and directed by Kenneth Branagh, terrific movie. You know, none of those movies. I don't think Belfast even made $10 million at the box office. Yeah. And you know, right now, especially with the surge going, even though hospitalizations are not skyrocketing on the same level as infections, that target demo is justifiably skittish about going back to theaters. I don't blame them, you know. But at the same time, it's just a shame. And you know, going into 2022, hopefully this surge will sort of come and go as fast as even, you know, the top infection gurus like Fauci are saying that it'll like come and go. And I really hope that's true, because you know, these are the types of movies that need to be seen. You know, you're talking about comedies. Yes, they do need to be seen in theaters. But you know, look, you know, Coming to America 2 was supposed to open in theaters, but Paramount sold it to Amazon Prime. But it's just a mess right now, and movie theaters are in jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and you know, Scott Mantz, one of these people that advocates for Spider-Man: No Way Home for consideration for Best Picture here. Austin, we were talking about that earlier as well. So, you know, even the artsy fartsy Scott Mantz sees the truth of Spider-Man: No Way Home. No,
well, the thing about Spider-Man being tutored for Best Picture, you know, that's all Sony. You know, they are definitely gunning for Spider-Man: No Way Home for Best Picture. And look, you know who really wins if it actually gets nominated for Best Picture? The Oscars, because that means that all people will watch the Academy Awards. Are you kidding? Do you know how many people would watch the Academy Awards if Spider-Man got nominated for Best Picture? I mean, like, oh my God, that would be amazing.
Well, Scott, what do you see going into 2022 that you think, you know, there've been so many conversations about, you know, and most of us have been around for a while. We've heard about the quote death of cinema as much as we hear about the death of rock and roll. And it's always that kind of thing, back and forth. But this is the first time where something really kind of has attacked people's ability to go to a theater in an extended amount of time. I was mentioning how 2021 is a sequel to 2020 in terms of the theaters and the Omicron variant and all this. As we go into 2022, do you think we bounce back at the levels that we did before for these more independent or medium, for lack of a better term, level films and smaller films at all? Or do you think this has been irreparably damaged, those section of films, and people will wait now? People have kind of gotten themselves conditioned the last 2 years to wait for these films to show up on streaming.
It's a great question, Johnny. It's also a loaded question because first of all, first of all, you're talking about, you're talking about a conversation about the death of cinema, quote unquote, that people have been having ever since like radio.
Radio,
television, that got TVs, no one's going to go to the movies. Then you had VCRs in the 70s and the 80s. Then you had the DVDs and the Blu-rays. Then you had the streaming services. Oh my gosh, no one's going to go to the movies. But Johnny, like what you're saying about this, with the pandemic really affecting theaters, I mean, for more than a year, movie theaters were closed, and that is something that all those other mediums did not do.
Right, exactly.
Theaters. The fact that they closed, the fact that you have a theater, a beloved theater in LA, like the ArcLight in Hollywood, which is the center of the movie universe if you are living in Southern California, and the fact that that movie theater did not reopen when movie theaters reopened, that was you could call it a death knell if you want. I mean, I never subscribed to all those other theories over the last, 50 years of my life. People would always say, oh my gosh, the theaters are going to go away because of the streaming services. But in this case, what the pandemic did, and this is the answer to your other question, Johnny, is what the pandemic did is it sped up a process that was already in motion.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And by that, you know exactly where I'm going with this. The fact that you had these shorter theatrical windows, used to be a movie played in theaters for like a year before it came out on home entertainment. Then it was 6 months, then it was 4, and then lately it's 3. But you also had a situation where the types of movies that people would go see in the theater were the Star Wars films and the Marvel movies. And the other, like the mid-range grown-up films started to really be in jeopardy. And of course, the independent movies, once in a while you got a fluke like, Little Miss Sunshine, which did really, really well. Yeah. But this really sped up the process where people will only go to the movies to see Spider-Man, James Bond, Shang-Chi, Dune, whereas grown-up films like Belfast and King Richard and now West Side Story, like people aren't going to see a Steven Spielberg movie that's based on a movie that won 10 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Are you kidding me? It's and of the independent films, fortunately, the streaming services really came to the rescue for films like that. Like, there was a movie that I really loved that came out this past year in 2021 that streamed on Netflix back in February. The movie's called I Care a Lot. You guys see this?
Yes, the Rosamund Pike film. Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. Johnny, I love that movie.
Yeah,
Steve,
good movie.
Shannon, if you have not yet seen I Care a Lot, and for everybody watching and everybody listening, I'm going to hang my hat and die on the hill and say that I Care a Lot was one of the very best movies of 2021. Rosamund Pike is just absolutely phenomenal. Peter Dinklage, this is a really good, fun, dark comedy and about a profession that is existing and one that is definitely take advantage of the elderly. But this movie, I Care a Lot, is streaming on Netflix anyway. So it's streamed virtually through the Toronto Film Festival. Right. The year before, in 2020, when things were really, really bad. Netflix came in and picked it up. They put it on their streaming service, and people were able to see that. So that's just an example of how the streaming services came to the rescue of a lot of those movies that were at film festivals, independent films. It's a tough situation. Like right now, you have this movie, Parallel Mothers, directed by Pedro Almodovar.
Such a good film. With Penelope Cruz. You did a Q&A on this, Scott. You hosted it. Penelope Cruz is incredible in that movie.
She is fantastic. It's one of her best roles, and that's a bold statement. She was an Oscar winner for Vicky Cristina Barcelona, nominated 2 other times, and this is one of her very, very best roles, directed by Pedro Almodovar, who's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And he has a new film out in select theaters right now called Parallel Mothers. And will it get a wider release? Well, that depends on if people see it in select cities, in limited release. And how is it doing? Not that great. And that's a shame, but I get it. People those grown-ups who that movie is targeted for are not going to rush out to see it in theaters. And those are the kinds of films that will suffer.
Yeah, it's a good point. Shannon, I know you got to go. Thoughts on this before you take off here, man? Thoughts on so much of the information Scott laid out here. What's your feelings on it as we go into 2022?
I actually saw the previews for I Care a Lot, and I was so jazzed because I like a dark comedy. And someone said, a friend of mine's like, it made me feel bad about life. And, and where we were when that movie dropped, I'm like, maybe not yet. But hearing Scott's recommendation and where we are now, I'm a little more optimistic. So maybe that's what I'm going to stream when I get home tonight.
Check it out, Shannon. I'm telling you, listen, it's a dark comedy. It's not meant to be taken too seriously. It's just a lot of fun. And, Rosamund Pike, who obviously, who she is. I mean, she was an Oscar nominee for Gone Girl. That kind of performance, Shannon, that she gave in Gone Girl, where she was so good about playing bad. I Care a Lot takes it to another level. And you're thinking like, wow, she's really too good at this kind of a performance. But I really do recommend it. I'd love to hear what you think.
All right. If I watch it tonight, I will tweet at you right after.
You bet. Now you're talking.
All right, Shannon, thanks so much for joining us, brother. Much love to you. Please tell people where they can find you, brother, all your social media.
Yeah, if you'd like to follow me on social media. Oh, I'm so used to doing this for Geek Buddies. I'm all
just focus on you.
It's all about you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Shannon_McClung and on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. And if you'd like to see something that I've written, my newest episode of Strawberry Shortcake dropped yesterday.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shan. Great to see you, bud.
I'll see you guys later.
I'll see you soon. Peace.
Bye.
You know what just occurred to me, and I know we have other guests to bring on.
Yeah, we have two guests waiting to come on.
Okay, I'll say real quick, just listening to Scott, is what I realize is that it's the money. It's like follow the money is what I've been thinking about, is that it used to be that Hollywood is in the business of selling individual films, and success or failure depended on the success and failure of individual films. And what I think we're seeing now with the streaming services is the commodification of Hollywood. Is that now where they're really making their money is people buying access to a bunch of stuff, not on individual stuff. It's how do I draw you to want to buy access and pay me money every single month? That different financial model is shifting everything. I think
the content wars, that's what it is, and we have so many streaming services, and yet there have been so many that have been gobbled up by other streaming services. I mean, Warner Brothers DC couldn't figure out what to do until HBO Max finally showed up and kind of solved that issue once and for all. So you saw even studios looking like young babies trying to figure out how to walk in the streaming service. And here's Netflix, like the old man on the block, laughing at them, trying to stand upright. But eventually they will get there, as the desire and the need, as Scott mentioned, for these films to show up on these streaming services to be more of a regular thing. I think we've trained the audiences over. And I said this on Movie Talk when this first started to happen, before I got let go from, I said it over and over again. The audience will absolutely get used to being at home for these films. We, as prima donnas we can be as a society in America, we're also very malleable when we need to be. And if we get access to these films, people are quite happy to sit on their couches and watch these films over and over again. It's just us in the bubble that'd be like, you've got to be in a theater and you've got to be surrounded by all these people and you've got to have the perfect setting and the perfect temperature. It's us, but a majority of people are quite happy to sit at home.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before, Johnny, about how the pandemic sped up this whole process.
Yes,
you know, when theaters did open, I remember I was talking, probably to you guys and certainly other of our peers and colleagues about how, people got really used to watching movies from home. Yeah. Are they going to go back out to the theater? Then like Shang-Chi made like whatever, $90 million its opening weekend, Labor Day weekend. So it's a 4-day figure. But what that showed you is, people are tired of being home. They do want to go out, but they're only going to go out for a certain kind of a film. How many times have you guys said, you saw a movie and you're like, that was a great ride. Okay. Well, that's what these movies are now. They are rides. Dune, I love Dune, but it's a ride. Shang-Chi, Bond, certainly Spider-Man, these movies are rides, and people are going to pay to go on the ride, and they're going to watch these other movies from home because they're like, I'll wait, or if it's on HBO Max, why do I need to see King Richard in a theater?
Right.
And look, ultimately, for film purists like you guys and for everyone watching and listening to the Cine-Files, of course, a movie isn't a movie, I don't think, until it's playing on the big screen.
Yeah.
A movie, you've got to see a movie on the big screen. You just got to do it.
That's fair point of view. And let's bring in somebody who has seen quite a few films on screen with us and also at home. He's a friend of ours, Steve, for quite some time. He's an executive producer. He's been a showrunner. He's been a content creator. He's been a development guy. He's worked the world and been a friend of ours for well over 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show a guy who's been a guest of ours. And talk about a ride. Every episode we've done with him is absolutely a ride. That is the great Michael Ross. Michael, how are you?
Hey,
Michael, it's good to see you.
Guess what?
What, Michael?
I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
I got it.
What's that?
You got COVID?
I got the sickness for the Cine-Files.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man.
Why do I have to follow up Scott?
Somebody's got to do it,
Luck
Michael.
of the draw, man.
Everything he's saying, I'm like, oh my God, that's so. I'm nervous, but I'm also, yes, everything you're saying is exactly right.
That's his
Good
effect.
luck following movie mans, buddy.
I would like to say just one thing. Real quick. I'm gonna keep those. Whoa, I'm gonna keep those on.
Yeah.
Sing 2. We watched it last night with my daughter.
Oh yeah.
Why? Oh, because you're
Scott. Like, that's not the point of the story. Because she's 5 and she gets anything she wants. Not the point of the story. It was out in theaters for actually right behind. It was number 2 for 3 weeks. Probably could have stayed in. They yanked it out. And now every single parent that isn't bringing their child to the theater, which is a lot of us, rented that movie for $25 yesterday and will probably be renting it again 2 or 3 more times before it lets out. I'm not saying you could do that for every movie, but there is something to be said about if you can get that quick thing in the theater for people to get, I know like the economics don't work for it, but God, wouldn't that just be awesome? Where it's like you get this quick fix in the theater and then for the rest of the people goes out and you could still make a crap ton of money on it, I believe.
Well, Ross, as someone who's not hosting a podcast about film or not, working in the film industry as Scott Mance does as a reviewer and critic and pundit. I mean, you do work in the industry to a certain level, but you're not as, you don't do this for a living that like we do. No. What do you see happening? What should we be feeling over the last 2 years as more and more of these films have gone to streaming? And do you find that this is perfectly fine for you, perfectly fine for your family, perfectly fine for the people that you know?
So in all seriousness, when Scott was just talking now, I was like, it really, it made, I have not been sad about this. And now I am watching this show. So thank you so much, guys. I do consider myself a film buff. I consider myself a cinephile. I don't know. I consider myself a big fan of it. Yes. I do feel bad for a lot of you guys that have that is your life. It is your church, right? I mean, a lot of it is. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell you from the people that I just know and parents and everything else, the theater is going to be the last place anyone takes their kids or people that they go back to. People are going to live theater before, for some strange reason. I don't know why, but it's that seems to be the last. I am sad for the time. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to take my daughter to a theater, and that that is what makes me probably the most sad.
So you're saying like the movie theater, Ross, you're saying that the movie theater, even more so than going to like a theme park, is like the last thing people are going to do for entertainment. They'll go to a theme park, they'll go to, a dinner, a Broadway show kind of theater. Yeah. But when it comes to like a movie theater, it's like the absolute last resort. Why?
Well, I think it's also coupled with the fear of being in a crowded place with people where it's very easy access in and out to. Hold on a second, I'm getting emotional. I don't know, man, but also I feel too like you're also talking to a person on this panel right now that just like Shakespeare in London, Marvel shouldn't be able to produce a movie for a year. There, I said it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Right? There's also too much.
I agree with that.
The only movie that I would recommend from last year, the only one, I Care a Lot. Did you guys see it?
Oh my God! What?
Wait, hang on a second.
Is that on purpose? Are you doing this to curry favor with Scott?
Wait a minute.
He's shameless. Don't listen to him, Scott.
Okay, my middle name is Gullible. Did you see me talking about that movie about 5 minutes ago?
Scott, I can't wait to hang out with you more in person.
You and me, buddy. Ross, I'm telling you, I care a lot. My God, everyone, like suddenly the people at Netflix are going to go, why
did it spike? Yeah.
Just go wait up on I care a lot.
Now you're working in marketing for them. It's great. But when you said that, because as you were describing it, I actually will watch it. I'm not like Shannon. I like sad movies, but like the one I want to say from this year that because I only saw a few. Right, yeah. I saw like literally Free Guy, which was friggin' awesome.
It was fun.
Vivo, which everybody missed, but I loved more than a lot of other animated movies that are out there. Right, but Bo Burnham Inside, and argue with me that's not a film, but it is, and that movie fucked me up. Sir.
So can I say? You could swear, it's fine. We're on YouTube. So can I say the question I was about to ask you, Mike Ross, was what do you think was the most interesting piece of entertainment last year? And I was certain you were going to say Bo Burnham Inside. Yeah. I didn't even know if you had seen it.
I think because we also were obsessed during the COVID. We got all of those the Geffen at Home where they would send you a package and it was a magic show, or there was one where it was a single guy, but he was in the set was like a 3-story set, and he would take the camera around with him. It was like, what is this? So I was very into that stuff. So when Bo Burnham Inside came out, that movie messed me up to I'd be like beyond. It was also just like, independent, like there was independent film. Is that the future of independent film? I don't know. Like, who knows? But
why not? Billie Eilish can record an album in her bedroom. I'm sure Bo Burnham can do something in his bedroom as well. I love this comment here. Am I being punked? It felt as if they put shades on Shannon and gave him 5 Red Bulls.
But I wish that was true. That would be kind of amazing.
Incredible, like the other Shannon. But let's bring on another pundit here. Who's also a dad who's in our sphere of punditry, very knowledgeable about film. He's a co-host of Blurs in the Hood. He has appeared on numerous other shows. He's got a stand-up comedy special out now for you all to enjoy. And I think another one coming on the way if it isn't out already, but he's a gentleman who I appreciate and I also care a lot about, and that is the great Jay Washington. What's up, Jay?
Jay Washington.
I know, right? I'm here with all you amazing people, and first of all, Rocha, don't be kissing up to me and Scott Mance at the same damn time. I see how you did that.
Two people at the same time.
You did that at the same time, which is who I care a lot about, Scott. See how I did that, Scott? Like, what's going on, fellas? How's everybody doing?
Hey, Jay Washington, you rock, my friend.
Happy New Year, Jay. How are you, man? Happy New Year.
I'm good. I'm a little exhausted, but what's new? But I'm happy to be here. I just got done recording Mad Titan podcast with Winston, did my first episode back. And so then I went to the gym earlier, and then I still got to edit some other stuff. So life is just normal. Like it is,
basically. Yeah. Mike Ross, Jay Washington, Mike Ross, because you guys haven't met. Respect.
Very nice to meet you, sir.
Pleasure's mine.
Jay, your thoughts on this? We're talking about cinema in 2022. We're talking about what's going to happen after what we've had in 2020 and 2021. What do you see happening in terms of trends for cinema in 2022? What are studios going to greenlight? What films are going to be getting exposure? What films are not going to be getting exposure? Have we irreparably turned a corner in the world of cinema, and we're seeing more of these films that are going to permanently be going straight to streaming? What do you see happening here?
I see the evolution is here. Mm-hmm. This was something that was supposed to be years down the line. We were drawing this out. It was only everybody kept saying, man, it's going to be a day when movies are going to come out and you can straight watch it at home. And of course, theaters did not want that to happen because, again, theaters need people inside the facility.
Right.
But 2020 changed all that to show all I got to do is hit a button. And I keep telling everybody, when Trolls Worldwide made $300 million, that was it. That was it. That lets you know it'll be done.
Right.
Because again, like Mike said, parents are not taking their kids to the theater.
Right.
So if a movie like Trolls Worldwide, streaming alone can make $300 million easily, imagine how many other movies can do that. And yes, there are purists who want to go to theaters. I've said this numerous times to many people on Blurs in the Hood and things like that. Mm-hmm. Everyone, unfortunately, is not a cinephile.
Right.
So there are people who are just like, wait, I get to stay at home, pause the movie when I want to, go to the restroom, not miss anything. those things actually add up for people. Now, granted, yes, I'm one of those people who were like, when we saw Avengers Endgame in the theater, you know, there was something about being around a bunch of people seeing that, or seeing Spider-Man No Way Home recently. But again, depending on where you live and the circumstance, you now have people buying projectors, putting them outside in backyards, making their own theater experience. Yeah. So, and again, also the open air. We're still in the middle of this panorama, no matter whether people want to admit it or not. We're still in the midst of this. You know, people want to act like this is done. The quarantine lockdown period is done. Right. The pandemic is still here. And for that, people are not willing. It's weird, like Mike, everybody was saying, it's weird what people are willing to go into in a closed area. Yeah, but theaters are not. Theaters are not it. I'm telling you now, if Spider-Man No Way Home would have came out simul-released, that number that it has in the box office wouldn't exist. Right. Fair. Because more people would have stayed at home and watched it. People have waited so long for this movie. There was just like, I gotta go see it in a theater. But you have other movies now that are simul-released, and again, you keep getting these variants and situations that everybody's getting sick. People are like, I can just watch it at home.
You know what, Jay, you're absolutely right. And you know, when all the trade papers were saying that, the box office is back because Spider-Man is doing so great. You know, I'm saying, no, the box office is not back. Spider-Man is a fluke. Everything else is bombing. But the other thing, you know, talking about just like how, you know, we have all said throughout this episode of the Cine-Files that what the pandemic did was it sped up this process by which people are going to stay home and watch movies, and they're only going to go out for specific films, of course, the big budget films. But what's also happening and has been expedited by the pandemic is that the studios are using some of their must-see movies to draw people to subscribe to their streaming services. Yep. I'm talking to you, Disney Plus. So you had Soul, which came out a year ago, and Soul was a brilliant masterpiece movie. Yeah. And then you had Luca, which was their next film, and now their next movie, which I forget the name of it,
Turning Red.
So that is that they, you know, just last week Disney said that it was going to exclusively stream on Disney Plus in the spring. So, you know, and you know, Disney Plus, you know, the membership keeps going up and up and up. And you know, Bob Iger, before he, you know, went out the door at Disney, you know, he said that, you know, Disney Plus is their priority, and the pandemic just sort of made it easier for him to prioritize Disney Plus.
Let me bring this point up real quick. What's the average amount for a subscription on Disney Plus? The average amount is about $13, right? Out on the average.
Yeah. I think so.
Disney Plus has over 200 million subscribers.
Yeah. Wow, that was fast.
Right? Over 200 million. They are making a couple of $1 billion per month.
Wow.
Not in a film, not in a movie, per month.
Crazy.
So when you think of it that way, if you're, again, as me as a business major, I respect what the studios are doing, because you're going to go whatever route is going to make you the most money, the quickest and easiest. Yeah. And then, again, you're making at least $2 billion a month in subscriptions if you're Disney Plus.
Real quick, according to real quick, Steve, sorry, we'll go right to you. It was according to Variety, as of October 2nd, Disney Plus had 118.1 million paid subscribers worldwide.
$1 billion.
From 160. That's still over. That's still over. You know what I'm saying? I may have been off about 100 million, but it's still over $1 billion a month.
Yeah, their revenue climbed 26% to 18.5 billion.
Yeah. So when we see Disney Plus saying all of these properties are in development, they can do it. Yeah. Because they understand everyone. Think about it. People who don't have a Disney Plus hear about a new Star Wars or a Marvel property, just those two alone, people are subscribing for them. Yeah. Then you get Netflix, who decided to say, you know what, we're going to make our own original content, but now we finna start pulling in A-list directors and actors. Right. People are like, I got to keep my Netflix. And you keep having these things. So that transition, you're going to have the big theater feel where you have the old school AMCs and the 16 screens and all that. That's going to possibly die down. Let's just be real. Yeah. That's what's going to, all the smaller screens are going to stay like to art house type theaters. Yeah. You're not going to have this anymore because, again, 2020 sped up what should have taken 10 years.
Yep, agreed.
Steve, what were you going to say?
So first of all, Jay, that I totally agree, and that's kind of what I mean by the commodification of it, is that people are buying access. They're not just buying an individual movie. But what I wanted to say was, we've been talking so much about the amazing, perfect cinema experience where it's opening weekend. You're seeing a great movie on a great screen with great sound and a great crowd, and that's awesome. But that is not actually all your experiences in a movie theater, because there's also the it's Wednesday afternoon in Glendale, and you go to sorry, Glendale, but I have terrible movie experiences there. But like where there's people on their phones and there's people talking and their kids screaming, and and it sucks, and so my living room is way better than that experience.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what movies are,
Yeah.
I saw Spider-Man in I did not go. Real quick story. I was supposed to cover the premiere, the red carpet, and then go see the movie, when I was done with the red carpet. But the previous night I was exposed to somebody that tested positive.
Oof.
So I was not allowed. I mean, I never tested positive. I was negative the whole time, but because I was exposed, I found out at 2:00, 3 hours before I was supposed to be on the red carpet, that I could not go see Spider-Man. I was devastated. So, I waited till the weekend, and I saw Spider-Man with a couple of my buddies, and I was glad. I was like, oh, this was actually great. I get to go with my friends. So they live in Anaheim, not too far from Disneyland. So I met them there. We went to a Cinemark theater. And guys, I was like, what the hell happened to the movie going experience?
Oh, yeah.
Kids are talking. They are on their phones. And wait a minute. What? I couldn't believe this. With my own eyes. There's a certain point of No Way Home when there's a big surprise and somebody held up their camera to the screen and took pictures of the screen with their phone. I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, this never happens at press screenings.
Well, and that's the thing I come back to, is that we live in this bubble. I don't mean in a negative way, but we've worked hard to be a part of this punditry industry, worked hard to be in this thing, and we hold on to it with both hands because we get to still live that cinematic experience to a degree, especially living in Los Angeles. You know which theaters to go to where everyone's going to, that's why the ArcLight, the death of the ArcLight.
Just what I was going to say.
Right. Was such a sad loss because everybody knew who went there. Yo, you don't pull the fucking phone out. You don't do any games.
You're not talking.
You're not talking. There's 2 trailers, and then we see the movie, damn it.
Yeah.
And you talk about it afterwards in the bar and give them money for the drinks. That's what you do.
Yeah.
But what you go a few miles outside, that's in essence, that's the regular people. And the regular people don't give an F that much about that situation. It doesn't mean that there aren't people who respect it and love it, certainly. But there's enough people who go to the theater just for fun and think they're in their living room.
But that's the thing. That's the majority of people, and people forget that.
Agree.
Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate fact. But the majority of people don't care about the cinema experience.
And it's not just the movies. This is everything. People on Broadway. I'm so glad that it is this, because now I can watch every single Broadway show on TikTok on my phone. And I want to blow my brains out, but I get to see Hamilton. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that's why I propose.
Oh, here we go.
Everybody has the ability, but you saw at CES. I don't know if you've seen at CES now, all of these now, with the movie projector camera that also has we're starting to see now, is there a technology way? So
that's a
for
great
example,
point.
John was just saying, I host movie nights in my backyard. I have one of those huge blow up screens.
Yep.
And I feel bad because my 5-year-old, I've still not taken her to go see a proper movie, and I'm going to, and it's going to be amazing when I do. Okay.
I feel bad too. I never got invited, but that's okay. Russ.
That's all right. Now you're all family, and I have your hats, and I know
you can take my seat. I'm in San Diego. You can take my seat.
So you got this big blow up screen, right? And this amazing experience. I would, as a person that hosts, and it's 20 people that come over, right? I would pay $1,000 for a license to be able to view that. You know what I mean? And I know we should get that place, but is there an in between where, you know what? You can still make your money. If you give it to me 3 weeks after your premiere, again, I know it's not an answer. The in-movie experience, it's not an answer, but maybe we can give the power to the people that, to help out the bad situation. I don't know.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, I agree with what you're saying, Michael, and I agree with what you're saying, Scott. It's one thing. This is a business.
Yeah.
The experience,
100%.
This is a business. It's no matter how much we may feel about what corporations may do, what different movie studios may do, it is a business at the end of the day. And the only reason you go into a business like this is to what? Make money.
Yeah. And you know what? Businesses, it's the mantra they have to live by is adapt or die.
Yeah.
And that's, again, 2020. You brought up talking on Movie Talk, Rocha. I remember when Disney Plus, I was on Movie Talk, the episode when Disney Plus was announced, HBO, all this, that, and the third. I said, people don't understand. We as consumers made this happen. Why? Because we started pushing that whole cut the cord from cable movement.
Right.
When we pushed that cut the cord from cable movement, all of these subscription services were like, what? Bet. But then the problem became, as you started getting so many services, they added up and everything, plus your internet charge, you started paying more collectively than you realized what you were paying beforehand.
Agreed.
Yeah. It works mentally because it's like paying for the gym, right? Well, it's going to go out of my bank account anyway. I don't have to go if I don't want. I know I should go, but it becomes something you're absent-minded about. Man, I would even argue that all of us who have Patreons have subscribers that are just like, I don't really participate in anything, but you know what? It's $5 out of them. No big deal. I don't care. Like, it's just like, it's too much stress and a thought to try to take it off. So I'm just going to leave it. And I think it's the same thing with streaming service. And I think all these companies have banked on that, just like gyms have banked on that for many years, that it's too much trouble just to stop it. So you're just going to let it go as is. And I think that's where you could. But Ross, you brought up a very, very interesting point. This idea of how is technology going to adapt to fit to the desires of the consumers that are now changing as we see them being more and more okay with seeing films at home in large numbers, depending on the film. Are they going to now allow for some way for you to be able to screen a film-like experience in your own home without having to necessarily build out a huge theater room? Will you be able to do that in the backyard? And do you pay a license? I mean, I think that's so interesting to see that as a possibility. And will that technology now become so available that the prices go down? I mean, remember,
well, look at what Disney Plus is doing now with the IMAX.
Just real quick, VCRs were $1,000 if you remember the first time they came out. You can get one for Blu-ray players, same thing. You get a Blu-ray player for $60 in a blowjob. Go, yeah, Jay.
Jay, what are you going to say there, Jay?
Look at how Disney Plus is now. They're now giving the enhanced IMAX experience.
Right.
Yeah. Disney Plus,
right? The 3D. You're right. The IMAX. That's right.
It's through Disney Plus. This isn't. You don't have to do it there. They're like, now we have it enhanced. So what Disney Plus was like, how many people are going to watch The Mandalorian, watch Shang-Chi, watch all these movies in this enhanced experience? They get those numbers. We might not get those metrics. Right. They get those metrics. And from those metrics, you will start seeing more and more of their properties come out that's IMAX enhanced. And all the person has to do now is, again, a mic can set up in his backyard. All he has to do now is buy a bigger surround sound system to compensate what the IMAX sound is. Yeah. So it's automatically done. Yeah, CES is going to bring out a few more things that are going to make stuff easily able to be purchased at a Best Buy and whatnot. But for the most part, the studios know. Okay, like you just said, Scott, adapt or die.
Jay, I think you brought up something that's so important, which we haven't talked about, which is metrics. One of the differences between the movie theater experience and the streaming experience is when you're on Disney Plus, they know when you pause the movie. Yes. They know what you watch. They know how long you watched it. They have so much data, and that data can drive the decisions they make in their business in a really, really clear way.
Steve, the one thing they don't have data for, right, which is also what we're seeing with Verizon and the rest, and I know this for a fact, they don't have a lot of demographic information.
Yeah, that's what they don't have.
Now, back, right, I'm sure they do now because I've been to a Disney park and I entered on all of my family's information, and I'm sure it is now linked to my Disney Plus. So maybe they do true, more. But I know a lot of these streamers, one of the big problems they're having, and all of a sudden, like, Nielsen ain't looking too bad with their 50,000 boxes in these houses because they don't have any idea who is actually watching the content. So I'm sure that, like you said, Mr. Jay Washington, that is the next step for sure.
I just want to say, in terms of the big screen versus streaming, I said this, right at the top of the conversation, is that movies are not movies unless they are shown in a movie theater first. So, but even if you miss it in the theater and catch it on streaming, it's not going to be the same because, let's say this movie, did you guys see Power of the Dog?
Yeah, the Cumberbatch Western on Netflix. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw that at the Telluride in a theater. And like, Jane Campion directed the movie, the scenery, the vistas, it's really, really beautiful. The landscaping, it's really immersive. Like it really feels like, you're out there in the West and everything like that. And then I saw it at home on Netflix, and boy, did it lose a lot. It was like, I could not lose myself. I have a, 65-inch TV. I could not appreciate the scenery and the production design of the film. And I got to say that movie is absolutely overrated. It is so fucking boring. It is so.
So how you really feel, Scott? Jesus.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Licorice Pizza. No, we're talking about Power of the Dog. Talk about overrated.
I don't get it. Power.
But let me ask you this question, though. Go ahead.
So
let me ask you this question, though, Scott.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this question, though, Scott. To you, the experience is different because you are a cinephile. Yes, you are a person who appreciates in the theater. There is someone else who just may watch it on a regular screen and is like, damn, this is still dope to them. Like, Dune is the prime example of that, how everybody who was a fan of Dune was like, you have to see it on the big screen. Yeah. And there were many people who weren't fans of it who watched it on the TV was like, I liked it just as fine. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It depends on the person.
Right. Well, it does. Yeah. And Jay, you make an excellent point. We brought this up earlier, Scott, before you came on the show. Like, I saw Lawrence of Arabia on the television for the first time, and I was still on a 25-inch television that all we could afford, and I was blown away. The first time I saw Godfather, same television, rented the film on VHS, and I was still blown away by it. I think there are some films that transcend how you watch them and where you watch them, but that doesn't mean you're not getting the optimal experience in a theater. That's absolutely probably the truth. It's just that more people we aren't like the biggest bucket of people that goes to see these things. That it's the regular people. People are not regular, but people who aren't cinephiles who just go to the movie or see it at home. It's not a big deal. And some people can't afford going to the movie. Some people, it is actually a luxury to go see a $15 film. And I got skewered for this year, a couple of years ago on movie when I said it's the price of a Taco Bell lunch. What's the big deal? But the truth is, once you actually do the analytics and look at this stuff, which you mentioned, Mike, the demographics and the analytics here, you realize there are quite a lot of people who live below the poverty level in our country. And yes, going to see an $8 movie is a legitimate conversation that you're having with yourself. Depending on your budget. Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to get concessions and stuff like that, not just the movie.
Yeah, not just the movie, right? Exactly.
Can I change the subject a little bit? Because something came up a while ago, and it's like the opposite end of what we're talking about, which is, John, you mentioned Patreon, and obviously we have Patreon a while ago, and I just want to bring up, there's this other end that's happening right now where individual creators without a studio, without a lot of money behind them, are able to create things and get paid directly from the people that listen to or watch the thing that they do. And I think that is one of the most amazing things, because one of the things, as a person who's tried to create stuff my whole life and tried to get my stuff out there, that not having to have a middleman who not only changes and forces you to do what they want you to do, but also takes the lion's share of the money, like to be able to just create something and you get to pay a creator directly for something that you love. That is an amazing change that's really happening right now.
I agree. Scott, last words on this. I know you got to go, brother, man. Thank you so much for giving us the time that you gave us. We know you're busy. So any final words here as you wrap up your spot here on the Cine-Files episode?
Listen, I'm proud to be a cinephile, and I'm proud to be here on the Cine-Files. And you know what? It's like, yes, I'm definitely looking at things, with blinders on, because I just, always cherish the movie-going experience. But, it pains me when I see people watching movies on these things. That's just not the way movies should be seen. Right. But I think that the movie-going experience, our temple, the movie theater, is in jeopardy. And I just don't know how much longer the movie theater experience can withstand the ravages of this pandemic. I mean, of course, there are far more important things like people's lives,
right?
But being a cinephile, I am deeply concerned about the future of the movie-going experience.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Dude, thanks so much for your time, brother. Great points. Absolutely. Look, advocating for a cinematic experience does not mean you're necessarily being an elitist. It means that you know and love the medium of film and you know the optimal way to enjoy it, and advocating for it does not mean excluding other people. I want to make sure that's clear and clarified here because I've seen that battle online. It's driving me insane. So, Scott, thank you so much. You're the best, brother, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. Great seeing you guys. Thanks so much.
Scott, I'll see you on the Enterprise.
You got it. Beat me out of here.
Take care, brother. All right. You can follow Scott at Movie Mance. Follow him for all he's doing. Of course, as Steve mentioned, they're co-hosting the Enterprise Incidents as well. Steve, do you have any other questions you want to throw in, Steve? We got about 10 minutes left in the show.
Well, since I mentioned it, I'm curious if you guys have discovered, the small creator, not the big one, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the other art that you've discovered over the last year that's been really amazing.
I mean, being a part of Blurs in the Hood, as part of one throughout the pandemic that started because of, we created a platform. We created, Winston A. Marshall and myself created something while everybody was locked down. And we just were like, at first, all right, let's just see what happens. We did we pre-taped it. And then all of a sudden we pre-taped 4 or 5 of them. And we're like, yo, let's try it live and see what happens. And so we were able to grow that. I've watched people who have grown making sketches and things like that solely through Patreon. I've always, because I'm writing now, I'm writing pilots as an actor. I want to be able to write my own stuff. But always I go back to what Issa Rae created via straight YouTube. Creating Awkward Black Girl and having that get so much traction that it gets picked up and turned into Insecure, which became one of the highest rated shows ever. And so you see this consistently, again, Patreon, OnlyFans even. It's funny because people always think OnlyFans is just for porn, and it is not. It is not. It is
what?
It's not. That's the thing. People think it's just because that's all we hear about.
Yeah.
But it just has the open ability to do that. So again, these times have forced people to, not just corporations, but regular people to adapt.
Yeah, agreed. Jay, I know you got to go, brother. Any final words to add to what you just said here?
I do enjoy going to theaters and I enjoy movies, but I also understand the bigger picture that me enjoying theaters is a small percentage of the overall viewing public. Yeah. So we're going to have to learn to adjust and be like, yo, we might not consider watching things at home the optimal experience, but now because this population is always on the go, like Scott said, he hates seeing people watch him on these, but that's why you're able to watch him on these now. Yeah. And so it's the next 2 years are really going to show how far, like I said, the big blockbuster multi-screen theaters, those may die down. Yeah. You'll start having just the art house type deals.
Yeah, fair point. All right, well, that's Jay Washington. Tell them where you can find your brother, man, and all the things you got going on.
Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Mr. J Washington is spelled down below. Blurs in the Hood every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Me and Winston A. Marshall. YouTube.com, twitch.tv/Blurs in the Hood. And the Mad Titan podcast comes back tomorrow. It's where I get you caught up on all the things happening in the Marvel and DC live action cinematic universes. It is barbershop talk for nerds. So come on in the convo. I'm doing a bunch of auditions, so I should be appearing on some commercial soon. Who knows? I got a bunch of stuff I got to do. That's why I got to go. Thank y'all for having me as always.
Thank you, Jay. Great seeing you.
We love you, Jay. We love you, Jay. All right, that was Jay Washington, ladies and gentlemen. Phil coming in saying the neighborhood is such a great community. Respect to Jay and Winston. Thanks to Rocha for leading me to discover Jay through sports, through game time, not sports time. God damn it. Get it right, Phil. Ross, I know you got to go as well. Any final words here as we wrap up our conversation on film?
I want to see those two fight.
Jay and Scott?
Yeah, like not. I know what they both have to say now. I want to see them out fisticuffs.
Oh, well, wow. They've done it verbally for sure on numerous shows, and they're great. That's why I love that we're able to get them for the Cine-Files today with me and Steve, because they are just fantastic guys with great
I felt like I was just watching the show, and I forgot I was on it for a few minutes there. So that was they're hysterical. I actually have a question for you guys.
Oh,
because I was waiting for the right time to ask.
Yeah,
which
now it is.
Now it is. It's just us. With the daughter's turning 5 in a few days here. The urge, John, and you will have this one day, of the timing, and Steve, you've had this, of when to show them certain things is a humongous responsibility.
I think five. I think 5 is old enough for Last Tango in Paris. What do you think?
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Maybe Midnight Cowboy.
Please. I think one of the positives to us not having children or not going to have children is that I don't expose them to stuff at early and feel guilty about it for the rest of my life. Too early. You know?
Killer Clowns from Outer Space at 3 was a bad decision. We discussed that. We talked about that. No,
I saw Jaws at 10 and it messed my life up for the rest of my life.
We all saw. I saw Halloween at like 7, so I don't want to hear it. You know, like way too early. No. And I know not the whole trilogy, the whole thing. It's only by the way, she's only going to see 3 films. She's never going to see the rest. Star Wars.
Jax was probably I struggled with this, and here's 2 things. Videodrome just popped up because that movie messed me up, man.
Steve, the reason I asked too. Here it comes. Here they come. I knew it. Steve, the reason I asked too is because we just went to Disney and we got to ride. She rode Rise of the Resistance.
Oh yeah, nice.
Right? She rode. We did all of it. We did Cantina. That is her first exposure to Star Wars, guys. Wow. Was going in that land. So, Steve, go ahead.
So here is my first piece of advice: is don't get your hopes up for the experience that you want them to have. Like, and it's a really, really tough one. So I agonized about this. I went on websites like, what order should you show Star Wars? And thinking about it. And it ended up the first Star Wars movie that Jack saw was The Phantom Menace. And the thing is, and it was funny. I hadn't seen it forever. And I was watching, I'm like, oh my God, this movie's so terrible. He totally liked it. He was, I think, 4 or 5. And he has no memory of it now. Then we watched the original trilogy, which he really liked. But the problem is, comparatively, Star Wars: A New Hope is slow. You know, it is a slowly paced film, and so like, it's kind of. He did like it, but it's so funny too. I'll just say, like I said, hey Jax, why don't we watch the Clone Wars together? You and me, we'll sit down and we'll go through the whole show. We got through 2 episodes. He's like, I don't want to do this. And I'm just going like, if my dad had come to me and said, Steve, I want to watch Star Wars with you, let's do that, I would be like, really, Dad?
Papa, finally.
If my son comes to me and goes, Dad, come on, let's watch this YouTuber, and I watch like 30 seconds, I'm like, I can't look at this. This is the most heinous things I've ever seen. But he does like the original Star Wars trilogy. He doesn't love it. But it has been definitely how we roll things out to him. So he's now 10. He's seen both Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade. Right. Loved them both. That was great. We showed him, and maybe this is bad parenting, but we showed him Die Hard, which he loved. Yeah. And it's like, it's violent, but it's not scary.
Right.
And so...
No, my daughter will not be watching Die Hard until she's 18. That's also dating too. That's so funny.
You're so cute. Good luck. You're so cute. That daughter's gonna run all over you, pal. You're so cute. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ross, for joining us here as we wrap up. You're the best, brother, man. Do you have anything to plug? Like, what are you working on? What are you going on, bro? Really?
Nothing.
Okay.
No, man. I mean, like, yes. You know what? Go if you've got daughters, you've got girls 6 to 9 years old. LOL Surprise and Rainbow High. We've got 2 animated series that are both killing it right now, not only on YouTube but Second Lives on Netflix. So go check them out. They're cute. They're awesome. Good shows.
Yeah, that's great. I just gave 2 of those LOL dolls to my niece for Christmas. So
thank you for my bonus. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Well, you can follow Ross at Otter Puppet there, and much love to you, brother. Great to see you. It's been so long. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for coming by, Mike.
We love you. Yeah. All right, Steve. And then there was you and I, the 2 of us, to wrap up this show. Final thoughts, final things you want to talk about? Anything you want to throw out there before we wrap it up?
It's so funny when we set this thing up, and hoping that we would have these guests just kind of pop in. Yes. I had no idea where it was going to go, and it went exactly where I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
You know, I so enjoyed having these guys come on the show. It was great seeing everyone. The conversation was fascinating.
Yeah.
So I absolutely enjoyed it, and I hope everyone watching did too.
Yeah, yes, 1,000%. You know, hosting these kinds of shows are a lot of fun because you never know where it's going to go. But when you've got professionals like Scott Mantz, like Shannon McClung, like you, like Mike Ross, it helps that they understand the situation and they can get in and get out when they feel comfortable doing that. And so we're very thankful they took their time to hang out with us today. And I thought we had some great conversations and some interesting conversations.
Agreed.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely learned a bunch. It's funny. A professional like Mike Ross, I want to say what he had said in the private chat, because I just found it funny, because there's a moment where we're discussing when he was going to come on, and Scott was on, and he said all good here for you guys whenever you want. I'm going to ruin whatever you're talking about anyway. and I wrote, can't wait. Because with Mike Ross, who knows? You never know. Happen. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, Steve, we do have 3 Streamlabs that came through, so let's read them real quick and answer them. Wayne Edwards donated, and he said, thank you, Wayne, first of all. Hello, John and Steve. Okay, guys, it is time to do Failsafe. I love it. In my top 10, it is so underrated. Living Under the Shadow of Dr. Strangelove. John has the Criterion edition. That I do. Mance mentioned he would do it with you guys. What does Steve think?
I haven't seen it since high school. I have only the vaguest memory of it. It's funny. I would totally do it. Yeah. We've been talking about this crowd pleaser thing, and we've been talking. It was so funny. In the beginning of 2021, you said very clearly, I want to do more classic films.
Yeah.
And I think we've really done that. And then we really did a lot more classic films. And then because of Bogdanovich and Sidney Poitier, we're doing some more classic films. And so I think it's going to be a while before we do Failsafe. I think we need to get back into the modern era. But I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, and Wayne, the easiest way to make an habit is being a $50 and above patron. Is that correct, Steve? Is that right? So where you get one of your selections chosen at some point during the run of our show. Mon donated, says, I cut cable to save money. Now there are a million streaming services. Who has time to track which app has what? I remember wanting to see the Rosamund Pike film and then forgot. It's overwhelming, and going to the theater can be easier, but has to be a spectacle film. Yeah, Steve, that's actually an interesting point. Going to the theater allows them to curate films that I need to see, and I have a certain amount of time to see it, or else it's gone. So there's almost like an impetus that theaters kind of serve that purpose as well.
First of all, in terms of the money thing, I had the same experience. We literally, when we cut the cord a long time ago, I literally did a spreadsheet, because that's the kind of person I am, to figure out what the cost was. And I figured out that we would save, I think it was $1,700 a year and be able to see everything we wanted to see by getting rid of cable. Yeah. That is totally not true now.
Yeah,
because there's so many streaming services, and I have Hulu and Netflix and HBO and Disney. It ends up costing a lot of money for all this stuff. As far as the movie thing is concerned, I think that's a great point because what happens is there's that movie you want to see that's on Netflix, and maybe it's the more heavy, serious movie. It's like, well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. When it's in the theater, you have to go see it, because it's not only going to be in the theater for a limited amount of time. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Thank you, Moan. And Phil P. from London. Massive love from London town. Respect the stacked guest list, John and Steve. Has the cinema box office versus streaming debate been impacted by the fact that times people are scared to go to the cinema even when they could, and we streamed for our sanity?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And, I saw someone sarcastically posting a comment here saying, oh, you guys are hypocrites overreacting to a once-in-a-lifetime virus. No, what it is we are reacting and having a conversation about something that's actually happening. Who gives a shit if it's once in a lifetime, once in a million years, or once every year? It is us talking about what is actually happening and analyzing what we think is going to happen next. And you're a fool if you think people don't get used to a certain thing and then just kind of let go of remembering how this other thing was. It happens all the time. It's called evolution, as Jay mentioned earlier, or progression. We all do it. We all do it in micro ways and in macro ways in our lives, depending on those things. Remember that place you used to go to all the time? Why'd you stop going to it? I don't know, because one day you just didn't want to go anymore, and then it just became that was your thought about it. And then all of a sudden, this place you used to go all the time becomes something you used to do, and you probably won't do again because you grew out of it or you evolved past it. That happens all the time in life. Cinema, films, the way we're going to see them, same thing could be happening for a lot of people in our country, in our world.
So first of all, I don't think this person knows what the definition of the word hypocrite actually is, because a hypocrite is someone who says one thing and then actually behaves in a different way. Right. I don't understand how us discussing cinema and the fact that it's in the middle of a pandemic is hypocritical. I don't get it. But I think it was Jay's point, and you just mentioned as well, that's the key, is that this made the evolution happen faster.
Yeah.
Is that it was a catalyst, because it's not like all these streaming services were in the works.
Yeah.
We were already having discussions about day and date releases. We were already having discussions about, Netflix and Amazon were already coming into the world.
Yep.
Apple was already coming in. We were already talking about, can these movies be Oscar movies? Who makes these movies? What are the unions are already worrying about how the pay structure is all going to work. This was all happening. The pandemic made it happen faster. Yeah,
it's something I said it on Movie Talk when it started happening. I was like, this is going to happen. I didn't anticipate happening this quickly, but it was going to happen. And sure enough, we all were saying it around the same time, because we all sensed it as analysts of the business. We saw what was happening. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks for your Streamlabs and your Super Chats. Thanks for keeping the chat lively. We had a little around 70 people joining us live, so we appreciate it madly. If you're still hanging out, please make sure you hit that like button on this video. And if you watch it later, hit the like button and leave a comment. Likes and comments elevate the visibility of everything we do here on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the Cine-Files YouTube channel and you enjoy this conversation, well, hit that subscribe button down below and hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the new live shows. We do one live show every month. The Cine-Files Live. It's a new thing we've done over the last few months, and people have enjoyed it, so we're going to keep doing it for sure. Steve, any final words? And where can people find everything we do, and you as well?
Well, I think after they're done liking and subscribing here on YouTube, they should also go subscribe on their favorite podcast place, because you might want to get it both places.
Yep.
And while you're there, you can review it. It came out sounding weird.
Yes.
Look, it's a live show.
Hey-o.
Sometimes things come out sounding weird. Earlier you said that I could get a Blu-ray player for a blowjob. So,
that's true. That's true.
But go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Apparently you can also now rate the show on Spotify, so if you listen through Spotify, please rate the show. Right up above our heads it says patreon.com/the Cine-Files. That is where you can suggest a film. You can listen to our Cine-Files shorts that we put out every week. We have one coming out on the Oscars, I think is the next one coming out. And we're talking about some of the stuff we talked on here. We have some really good shorts coming. You can subscribe to the show. I'm sorry. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cine_Files, on Instagram at the Cine-Files Podcast. And I'm SR Morris. It's right below me. And of course, my partner on my other podcast, Scott Mance, you already saw Enterprise Incidents. And we're doing the original Star Trek series. And John is going to be on, I think, real soon to do a really fantastic episode that I've been thinking about a lot.
My Mark Leonard imitation. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much to everybody. And you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. Head on over to my YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/John Rocha, where you can see all the stuff I've got going on, the Geek Buddies, Jedi Way, the John and Wendy Show, my reviews, my trailer reactions. Also, I've talked to Steve about Steve coming on to the show, coming onto the channel a little bit more often here in 2022, doing some reviews with him about current films, because so many of you have asked us to break 10-year rules. Well, a way to do that is to have Steve come on and currently review a film with me for a few minutes. So he's been very gracious to say yes. So look for that coming up on the Outlaw Nation channel as well, for sure. Ray Dominguez showing some love to us, saying catching the replay later. Cheers, gents. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ray.
You're the best. Yep.
Oh, no, just say one more thing, because you just put it in the chat, is we have our annual listener survey. There's a link in the chat, and this is where, among other things, you can help us pick you could vote for the first movie of 2012 that we're going to do on the Cine-Files, as well as an early film that we're going to redo in our much more expansive format. And there's some other interesting questions in there we'd love to get to your answers to.
Absolutely. And go back to around the 16-minute mark for this show, and you'll see all the announcements we have for what we're doing with the Cine-Files in 2022. Around the 16-minute mark, we launch into our announcements, which include Marvel stuff. Spike Lee will be doing a couple of months, probably, of Spike Lee, at least a month, maybe a couple, of Spike Lee. And so much we've got coming out here in 2022, and as well as the survey that Steve mentioned as well. So there you go. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Be well. We love you. If you want to have some more of me, I'm going to be on the World Girls channel at 7 p.m. PT tonight, answering 69 or 21 questions. I don't know what I'm in. I don't know what I'm in for, but I know that's what the name of the thing is called. So come and join me 7 p.m. PT tonight on the World Girls channel, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new Cine-Files live episode here for me and Steve on the Cine-Files. Take care and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.